Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, a weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. Thank goodness I'm doing this on Sunday instead of trying to get it done on a Saturday, which I did consider this weekend. I've had a very busy week, and I got sick at some point, and I've still been powering through and trying to get some work done, and I'm still on the tail end of that. All I really have left is a sore throat, which doesn't really, like, by midday, it's mostly fine. I'm drinking... I didn't know there was a product called this, but it's been around for a while. The throat coat. It's tea with like specific things that are supposed to be for throat health, but throat coat is the goat. That's what I gotta say. So yeah, I'm just gonna get through this Q&A. I'm gonna edit it like normal. I'm not in that kind of day, but yeah, we got patched this week, so I gotta make sure that I'm done, recovered, ready to go. All the first-time clears of everything, guides for everything. We'll have Savage the following week. Because of that, I want to do a heads up. My subscription list is going to be really packed this week, to the point where I think it would be silly for me to release Final Fantasy XI parts. They would essentially be sandwiched between so many other videos to kind of get lost in the sauce. That's actually why I moved a video from last Wednesday to Thursday, because I was like, oh, I have a Wednesday video and I really don't want it to clash with that, so let me give it its own release day. So I'm going to hold off on 11 videos. I already have them recorded. They're already ready to go, but just because my subscription box is going to be really busy the next 2 weeks, I'm going to hold off on releasing 11 parts for the next 2 weeks. I'm also going to record a few more parts while I have that leeway, even though we do have patch cycle. You guys know I mostly get like on day 0.2 stuff done to the point where I'm just spending the entire week making videos. And to give you some ideas, my first clears and reactions to the Arcadian raids, my first clear and reactions to the trial, the extreme trial, probably the MSQ upload, since this one is kind of a big one. Like Dawn Trail kind of started building towards something pretty interesting in point 1, and point 2 is starting to set us up for the finale of the actual Dawn Trail ending, which is in point 3. So this is an important one for that reason. Of course, the Sunken Temple of Karn changes for the duty support, as well as other various bells and whistles from the patch that I'll feel like I want to cover in an individual video, and predictions for the Savage mode mechanics as well, guides for the normal modes, etc., etc. So yeah, it's just going to be a really busy week video-wise. You're probably going to expect, dude, honestly, probably like 15 to 16 videos this week, and then at minimum, probably 7 to 8 videos next week, not including weekly Q&As, not including State of the Realm. So yeah, I mean, you're just looking at 24 videos over the course of like 14 days, not even over the course of like 10 to 11 days. So yeah, that's why I'm holding back on the 11 videos for the next couple weeks. I will give you an update as well. My second Final Fantasy Platinum video is almost done. I will also not be releasing that during this time frame, but this does buy me a bit of time to actually get the third video made as well. So yeah, we've just got a bunch of time bought for some of the series that we've had ongoing and will have ongoing. They're not going anywhere for the rest of the year. I do also have some other ideas that I've been bringing up that I might finally get to work on during that time. So we do like a busy season. We also have Cosmic Exploration at the end of the month, well, April 22nd. We have Claire Obscure Expedition 33. If you missed it, I released 2 videos on that. One of me just playing the press review copy that a bunch of streamers got not too long ago, and one of me soloing. Well, I soloed the entire thing minus one fight where you're forced to have 2 people, but I soloed every boss in that press review copy as Gustav, and it was a lot of fun. Like, I'm super pumped for that game. You have no idea. It's one of my most anticipated RPGs in years, just from like a uniqueness standpoint. Like, it borrows from a lot of really good ideas in recent years, but in ways that are very engaging to my brain. So I'm really looking forward to that as well. Lunar's also in April, Lunar Remaster. And I did get to play Xenoblade over the weekend a little bit. I don't want to put too much time in because I knew 7.2 is coming around. But let me tell you, I see now why people say Xenoblade Chronicles X is the best Xenoblade Chronicles game. I haven't even played it that much, and I'm already inclined to agree. My previous favorite was Xenoblade 1, followed by that 3, and at the very bottom 2, even though I gave 2 a pretty good objective review, like foregoing the gripes that I had with it, I could see how it's a pretty well-liked game. But for me, it's just... But no, Chronicles X, on another level. It's also one of the best running Switch games. I proactively got mad at Pokemon after playing Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, because I really don't know how Pokemon, how like Scarlet Violet and Sword and Shield, how poorly they run after seeing how well Xenoblade. Like, I couldn't believe it was like when Monster Hunter Rise came out on Switch. Like, was it as good as PC? No, but it still ran like magic on the Switch compared to a lot of other titles. Same sort of like crazy magic going on. It runs better than all the other Xenoblade games at that. So if you were even on the fence about it, I big recommend. I even did a sponsored stream for it. Like, yeah, definitely I got to put more time into it in the future. Like, I really want to, because it scratches a lot of itches for me. Scratches. Yeah, that makes sense. Anyway, let's get on to the Q&A. I just wanted to catch you up on some things and prepare you for the weeks to come. Man, we actually had to scroll down quite a bit. A lot of comments on last week's stuff, and I had to scroll through quite a few of them. I'll go back and talk about them at the end of the video, since I only kind of glanced through. And we're starting without a hello right off the... After that excited intro I gave you. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. It's been 2 years since 16 released, one since Rebirth. What's your take on the current state of the franchise? Anything you're looking forward to if or when 17 comes out? System, story, graphics, etc. Well, I really like 16. I really liked Rebirth. And I've actually really liked a lot of Final Fantasy projects that have come out. I loved Stranger of Paradise. That blew me away with how much I liked it. Like, Jack went from a meme to literally one of the best Final Fantasy protagonists in a he was so ironic, he unironically became good. And then going back, like, to even as far as 15, like World of Final Fantasy, even getting something like Chocobo Mystery Dungeon back again. Like, I can find a lot of really positive moments in Final Fantasy in recent years. Even something as simple as the Pixel remasters re-releasing. We still have a few things that need catching up. Tactics and 13 remasters are big on the list. And I know people are looking for like a next remake with like 6 or 9 or 8 or whichever one their personal favorite is. But I'm in a pretty optimistic spot. But the main reason I'm optimistic is not because of the individual quality or whatever of the games. It's Square has finally accepted that cross-platform is the way, which I always have the platform I want to play it on, but they have seen the light. They've said they've seen the light, and that's good for the consumers. So it doesn't affect me personally, but I think it's what Final Fantasy needs to have their next titles, their next kind of everything across the company, not even just Final Fantasy, to really see the success that they want to see. Now, I do expect to see some Switch 2 exclusives. Nintendo has proven to be a great exclusive console for JRPGs in the past. Octopath 1 was exclusive to it for a while, vastly outsold a lot of the stuff that came after it that was not Switch exclusive, Octopath 2 and several other titles that released on multiple platforms. So I think that you probably will still see a little bit of Nintendo exclusivity, but I think the timed exclusivity on that will be much shorter than it has been in the past, and that other major titles will be hitting all platforms more consistently. I think, honestly, I wonder if they're going to try to get out of the contract to exclusivity for whatever the third remake game is. I wouldn't be surprised if they're trying, at the very least. I just don't know what that contract looks like. So I'm optimistic because I think we're about to get a much more consumer-friendly availability for the franchise and Square titles as a whole. As for specific wishes about 17, it doesn't matter to me. I really like 16. 15 was okay, but more so after Royal Edition came out. And like I said, I've enjoyed a lot of other titles. So all I care about is getting a good game at the end of the day. If we got another one that was just like 16, that'd be great for me. If we got something that was like 7 Remake, the series, that would be awesome too. If we got something that was true turn-based after Clair Obscur comes out, maybe Square goes, oh, you know, maybe we should try a really high graphical fidelity turn-based game. That we saw that. They've seen Metaphor's success, even on the more anime-esque graphics, but they see Clair Obscur and the excitement. Maybe we get that. All of those are good for me as long as the story's good, the character's good, the gameplay's good, then I'm good. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Greetings and well met, Haps. Greetings. As a fellow Fizz Range main, I'm so sorry. I am also worried about the state of the role as a whole. Hearing in the live letter, melees are going to be buffed to account for downtime actually has me more concerned. This means the gulf between melees and Fizz Range will continue to be that much more pronounced during content with full uptime and as new uptime strats are inevitably created for 7.2's raid. Considering some groups were embracing 2 melee 2 caster compositions as early as week 2, I fear the 1% party buff we've clung to for relevancy past several expansions is no longer sufficient. Is there anything beyond the obvious that the devs can do to help restore our roles of relevance? So I will say that Well, it's something a little bit more minor. The fizz ranged defense, the damage reduction buff, has also been a point of relevancy. And I think each of the individual fizz range with Improv and Mine, they found moments of kind of like, oh, that's really nice. Curing Waltz, even what's it called? Dismantle for Machinist really came in clutch. But at the end of the day, I do think it's a potency problem. I think that a lot of, at least across the board, without getting into job specifics, Machinist, that a potency buff across the board is probably warranted. I mean, we've been saying it for a really long time. They've been avoiding it for a really long time. And I think I just really think it needs to be accepted. I don't think you need to I don't think it's like some sort of magic that needs to happen. You just give them some more potency and they feel better about themselves, and you probably can move on with your life until the next expansion when Machinist gets ignored for the 18th billionth time and they start the job action live letter / video showcase with Flamethrower for the umpteenth time. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Wanted to thank you for your level head and good vibes. You know what? I think that counts as a hello. I will accept it. Hello to you too, and thank you. Do you think there should be more content to act as a bridge from normal to extreme? Playing in groups with a lot of casual players, they seem to feel like there isn't an in-game content that helps them get their feet wet. I'd hope Car might be this, but instead only worsen the problem between EX and Savage. Yeah, so originally Car, Chaotic Alliance raid, for those who don't understand, was supposed to be closer to extreme difficulty. So it would have been, in a way, it would have been a bridge, because when there's 24 people doing extreme level content, the odds are that you stand out as a problem, thus feel the pressure of playing in a group. It goes down pretty considerably. And I think realistically, I've said it enough times that the platforms and the towers were largely the reason why this didn't work out that way. They even admitted they did go too far with COD specifically. Before it even released, they said, yeah, we meant it to be this, and it ended up being this. So it'll probably be the last time that happens. So Car is a big one. Regular Criterion is actually another space that I think is largely underutilized. When you only have 4 people to play with, even if you're talking about harder mechanics, the number of mechanics an individual player has to even know is so limited that while the execution could be strict, the resurrection restrictions can be stricter. Like Criterion is just, you can't use the regular res. Everyone gets the duty action res. So you still have some recoverability. That does change things. Like just needing to know a ton of pair and stacks and spreads and stand on this side of the arena and dodge this AoE. Like those are the fundamental basics that before you factor in things like tank swaps or healers having to do really specific things, like it just completely forgoes a lot of those 8-player standard mechanics. So I think looking at 4-player structured content and using that more as a bridge is probably the smarter thing to do. And I know a lot of people don't look to it for it because it's a very unconventional content, but Deep Dungeon is actually another good way to bridge that gap. Working with an actual group of 4 to work your way up to the top of the tower is a good way just to get used to higher threat opponents under a higher pressure scenario, which can be good for something like, again, jumping up to 8-player extremes, jumping up to 8-player savages, because nothing in Deep Dungeons, they're dangerous because if you screw up, you pretty much instantly die. But what they are asking you to do is far simpler than what an actual like raid boss will ask you to do. So it raises the punishment for mistakes without raising the bar of difficulty a whole lot, which also acts as a good gap. And we are getting that. We did get a chaotic. I don't think we'll get another this expansion. We are getting a Criterion at some point. So we are having those things, but I think more regularly approaching, like I said with Chaotic when it came out, it wasn't the time for Chaotic to come out. I really enjoyed it and I really liked the concept, but that wasn't what the game needed in that moment. I think things like this are more of what the game needs in that time frame where Chaotic actually came out. So maybe they'll learn their lesson about that in the future, and we won't see that kind of weird disjointedness that's clearly more pushed to people that are already into end game content. Another thing real quick, exploration zones, strangely enough, a great bridge to extreme level content. Just the the fates themselves, specifically the critical engagements, as well as if you are interested in the high-end raid stuff like Baldessian Arsenal especially. Maybe a little bit. Deliverums actually asks quite a bit of individual players, even with 48 people. But Baldessian Arsenal and what will probably become of Forked Tower and whatever the second one is, those are also really excellent ways to get used to high levels of communication, understanding simple but highly punishing mechanics, not unlike Deep Dungeons, in an environment that is far more, we want to help you get through this. The average community effort in exploration content raids is far more accepting of people who do make mistakes, far more accepting of people who are brand new and have never done it before. And that can be the first step people need to want to try other harder content. So those are some great examples, and I'd like to see them continue to supporting those kind of things or adding other things that support them in similar ways. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hello. Hi. Is this the first? No, it's the second hello. Never mind. It's only been 4 questions. I'm going to answer in real long ones. Hope you're doing well. Doing all right. Hope you're doing well also. I have 2 questions, but before that, I want to thank you as you're one of the reasons I played 14 as someone who never played an MMO. Your content was really helpful. I'm glad and thank you. Anyway, do you think we will see another Square Enix title with a turn-based system? Are they completely done with it? Because sadly, it seems like even though 10 was one of the best. We have World of Final Fantasy. We have Octopath. We've had plenty of turn-based titles over the years, of various kinds, mind you, not always of the same kind. Remember, Tactics, what's it called? Teofield was not turn-based, so not the, but Tactics Ogre Reborn. That's another good example. I know that it's not like stand here, stand there, bam, turn-based. Dragon Quest III HD 2D just released. We're getting 2 more Dragon Quest HD games this year, and honestly, that's probably not the end of it. People are expecting something with Chrono Trigger. Like, there's actually a lot of expectation for some turn-based stuff, mostly remasters coming out. But as for the main series, unless they really look at Claire and Metaphor and say, you know what, yes, maybe we should try again, I don't think so. But they have said, whatever the director, they assign the director of the next Final Fantasy game, they said whatever their vision of Final Fantasy is at the time is the vision that is realized. So if the next director says, I really want to make a turn-based game, that's really all it takes for it to happen. So not hopeless, but I definitely am not holding my breath on that one. But you also said any title, and there's plenty of titles that are still turn-based. Secondly, do you think we're getting a remake of 10? They will never remake Final Fantasy X. I will say that with the utmost confidence. They are going to reserve remakes for games whose graphical fidelity is very much further away from modern standards than the remaster. The remaster is so away from standard graphical fidelity that the original game has better faces, actually. There's no point in remaking a game that still looks good to this day and has not poorly aged unless you think that there were fundamental problems with the way that it functioned that can be overcome with a graphical update. It's kind of like how I felt about RE4 Remake. Like, if anything, remaster makes a lot of sense, but a remake? Like 2 and 3, a remake makes sense, but 4? Not really. Everything up to Final Fantasy IX kind of makes sense. Tactics makes sense, you know? Like, you can somewhat come up with why they would remake it. But 10 would just get another remaster facelift. Like, that's all you would ever expect. And the other closest thing you would get is a 13 quote remake. And that's not even a real, that's like the Demon Souls remake, where it was like, because it was trapped on the PS3, the architecture that actually the game was sitting upon was so not good that they couldn't just remaster it kind of deal. But it is still functionally just a remaster and not like a whole, like a wholly different game like 7 Remake is, you know what I mean? So I would just not expect the word remake to be used again anytime soon, and especially not with a PS2 era game or onward, when Final Fantasy's graphical standards, even from the PS2 and PS3 era, strikingly stand out today as sometimes better than modern games that are trying to have high graphical fidelity. Just go look at Final Fantasy 13. It's insane that that game still looks as good as it does 15 years later. And that is not just like, oh, he's just nostalgia. There's nothing about 13 that is nostalgic for me. Let me assure you of that. I'm playing it right now, and we're all kind of shocked. And I'm playing it on the PS3, not like a patched PC version. And we're all kind of shocked that it looks as good as it does. So the biggest thing it would need is a different aspect ratio. That I would appreciate. Hashtag Mr. Happy Monday pre-patch. Hello there. Hello. First off, I can very much agree with the sentiment regarding Black Mage changes. Yeah, I just can't put the energy into it. Secondly, considering that the update to Occult Crescent in 7.5x will likely be just as big as 7.25, I've been wondering if that big update might help 8.0 to 8.1 feel less empty than 7.0 to 7.1 felt. You know, so you're not entirely wrong, but you have to remember that 7.5, probably 7.55 to 8.0 is its own gap. What actually ends up happening, and we saw this with Eureka, is there are going to be a subset of people that either A, don't have the time or interest in exploration content because it just doesn't look good to them while it's being current, or they start it and don't finish it for whatever reason. And then, way down the line, they decide to give it a shot and find out they really like it. Eureka had blossomed when it was no longer its current form of content, even without like a significant change to the way that it works. It was mass adopted over time, and nobody saw that coming. I didn't see it coming. I didn't predict that when it was around. I was like, oh, eventually people are going to be like, this is the greatest content ever. I was like, oh, it's kind of built with a specific person in mind, and it'll get easier, and maybe some more people will try it out. But no, like the adoption rate of Eureka, especially after BA came out, was through the roof. It was insane. So much so that a lot more people ended up going into Bosia right when it came out. And that, of course, has its leveling function, but probably a less evergreen adoption rate. And they really want to recreate the evergreen effect of Eureka. So 8.0 to 8.1 less, think of it just forever on, is the better way to look at it. Now, I will say this. It only being 2 zones loses a bit of that evergreen feel, in my opinion, but not a whole lot. And I think the big thing is Forked Tower and whatever the other raid ends up being will be part of the reasons that keep it evergreen. Alongside Cosmic Exploration, getting updates all the time. I think they're generally speaking, especially if you skipped any patches this expansion, if you come back in 0.5 or you come back in 8.0 and you realize you need to check out all the stuff you missed, those people are going to have a ball. More than the people who are like us waiting patch to patch and, you know, like, oh, just give it to me already. So it's more evergreen for the lifespan of the game, unless something that is specifically evergreen with like a time frame on it, like 8.0 to 8.1. I think there are other fundamental things that would need to change from 8.0 to 8.1 to really get that feeling. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi, Haps. Hi. Since we're talking about job changes again, do you have any good examples of how jobs have had an elevated skill ceiling without it working around jank or very punishing to fail? It's easy to pick up and do all of its functions, but rewarding to wring out an efficient rotation. So there's been a lot of examples of that, but they almost have always come with a caveat of some sort of failure condition. A great example would be the earlier days of Monk, the various iterations all the way up to and through the Stormblood iteration, which is largely regarded by main Monk players as the top iteration. Let me put it this way. Monk players went through the Black Mage like cope ages ago, because after Stormblood Monk went away, the amount of Monk discussion / disgust with the post Stormblood double and triple tornado kick rotation stuff going away, it was very doom and gloom, not unlike the current Black Mage is. And Monk has largely landed in a pretty good spot after all that time. It was in an okay spot in 5.4 when it got fully reset, similar to what might be happening to Black Mages now. Got better in 6.0, got better in 7.0, and it's at a point where a lot of people who may have not played Monk before picked it up, learned it at least a little bit, and have gradually adopted it more and more over time. And that's kind of what you want to see maybe happen with Black Mage after this patch, is it like weans everything out, resets the board, and then begins building on top of that. But we don't know the changes yet, so we can't say. Monk is one I have personal experience with, where its skill ceiling has constantly gone up and down. The player base has always found interesting ways to make things work, and it was very Black Mage-esque, like I said, at a time. So that's probably, I think, the best example. I think other jobs have had to work around extensive problems to really give them that elevation and make it work consistently. So that, I think that's like the one single job where I would look at it and go, and keep in mind, Monk has had plenty of jank before, but I think it's the best next example. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Haps. Hi. Thanks for being a reasonable voice in the 14 creator space. I appreciate it. Yeah, sometimes I wish I was a little bit more enraged. Only because being level-headed is just not sexy in the creator space. Like, it's nice for me and my mental health and how I want to be portrayed and everything, and that really matters to me more. But you also can't help but wonder if you were a little bit more inflamed, that's the word I was looking for before, that it might not in some way be better for me. For years now, I haven't really cared about that. Like, sometimes I want to be a little inflamed about a topic, not even because I'm like extra passionate about it or I really want to see change. Not like you're seeing with like the Black Mage stuff or certain pieces of Dawn Trail, but more so because I think it's funny to imagine being that genuinely heated versus just having a moment of like, seriously, how did it end up this way? And getting loud, if that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense, but it makes sense to me in my head, I suppose. My question is on 9. You want to talk about me being inflamed, right? That's a segue. Got it on sale because why not? Dawn Trail has a ton of 9 references. I want to try it. Yeah, that's the best way to do it. Regardless of what anyone says about each Final Fantasy game, they are so taste specific to the individual. I don't want to play it with a guide, but I want to avoid any big noob traps, like opening chests in the past and Chrono Trigger before opening them in the present future. I don't plan on man, so that actually does happen in Final Fantasy VI, just so you know. If you ever play that past-present chest opening thing does happen. It's not that important, but it happens. I don't plan on platinum or anything. Please, for the love of God, don't. Is there any important noob bait I should be aware of? So, I will say that Final Fantasy IX is a game with so much missable stuff. So much so to the point where it may seem like playing with a guide is the ideal decision. I am a firm believer that Final Fantasy IX is best enjoyed when you know the least about it. The less you know about how Final Fantasy IX works, the less someone can influence how you feel about a system you may not have noticed before. I will tell you this one thing, and this isn't even a noob trap. I promise you most people who have played Final Fantasy IX don't know this, and I would actually consider this too much knowledge. But I will part you with one piece of advice. If you do not care about trophies, if you do not care about side like the potential missable trophies along the way, like the super specific like weird things that make the platinum a terrible experience, good. Your stat gain per level is very marginally affected by your total stats, including what you have from equipment. So if you want to increase a stat more on average from leveling up, then having, like, let's say you want more speed for a character, equipping stuff that increases speed has a better output for that. Now, it is way more complicated than I'm making it sound. I'm trying to give you the new player-friendly thing. Learn as many skills as you can from your equipment. Don't ever shy away from that. But if you ever find yourself on a I'm going to level for a moment bit, try to equip stuff that has stats you want more of. With enough of that, you may get a little bit more of a bonus. This one didn't have a hashtag, but it said morning and good night for me. So because it had a hello, I was naturally drawn to it in some capacity. Do we have any idea what the gear score requirement would be for Occult Crescent? So if I had to guess, I don't remember the exact number for Eureka, but Occult Crescent and the 7.5x version will likely have the same item level cap, and it will be very low. They tend to want your outside gear and effectiveness to not really be a factor inside. So it's not the minimum requirement that you care about that much. It is the item level sync that it stops you at. And if I had to predict a number, it'd probably be 700. Right? We were 730 gear. I honestly forgot what item level we are right now. If we were 730, yeah, 700 or 710 is the max. And I know that sounds weird because we're about to jump up another however many item levels. But no, I think that's it. Yeah, we're about to jump up another 30 item levels. So, but I would expect they keep it very close to the start of the expansion in terms of the amount that they expect you to have. So you probably won't need a whole lot. I'd have to go back and check Eureka's. I don't have 14 open right this moment, so I can't. But you can get a pretty good idea of what to expect if you go to Eureka's item level sync, which I think is 300, actually. And you compare that to the gear that was available at that time, and you probably get you could probably like draw conclusions from that. Hashtag Monday with Happy. Lally ho. Lally ho. Just want to ask regarding encounter design. I know there's a lot of people who love encounters in Monster Hunter and Souls games because of how they tend to be engaging even after multiple battles. Anything in 14 that can borrow, learn from them to help spice things up for its own encounters. Also, should we really need to add jump fight mechanics at some point? It was one of those things I experienced playing 16 made me think 14 can have them in some way. They don't want to do that with 14 because the way that jumps are registered from server to client side, the communication for it is not consistent. It is far more prone to being latency boned than something like, oh, I swear I was out of that AoE, especially for the amount of precision that jumping over an AoE will usually require. It's just not something they probably want to deal with on the coding side, nor do they want players to feel like they have to master jumping over objects as a primary game mechanic versus playing their job and avoiding the skills that the boss uses within the two-dimensional plane that we tend to. Sometimes 3 dimensions with certain fights, but mostly 2 dimensions. Now, as for encounters in those fights, generally Final Fantasy XIV encounters variance comes with the number of variables that the player has to consider in any given fight. Now, in Monster Hunter or Souls games, it is essentially the monster's position on the map, which is always going to play a factor, where you decided to move, where they decided to move, how close you are to the wall. Is there an elevation in the arena? Blah, blah, blah. But it's also the sheer fact that the average player does not know how to bait out specific attacks in Souls games or Monster Hunter games, or there's no discernible way to do so for most players. Almost always there is a way to do it, but even then there might be a list of skills that fall into the same criteria. And that's really the key. Monster Hunter and Souls games, you can't say the boss will do this exact pattern every single time without some sort of preconceived game knowledge that alerts you to baiting out attacks. Like if you ever watch a speedrunner play a Souls game and they go, oh, if I stand exactly here, it will bait this attack most of the time. And then you maybe watch that one run where it seems like they did it exactly the same and the enemy just does something different and they have to adapt. That's what creates that. With 14, it's, did this person get targeted by this debuff? Did that person? Like, look at Top. Top's a good example of a fight with so many permutations per skill that it creates a sort of... it creates a very stressful environment where you could do a fight 20 times and never be picked for a move and no kind of muscle memory or experience on how to actually do it. And what happens is you end up becoming the liability. Like, yeah, your team understands you've never been targeted. You've never had to practice it. But now you stand out as the person who was the problem in that pull and who caused the wipe. And you probably need more than one pull to get that right. So it's like the number of times you create that situation is usually what happens in 14. But because there's 7 other people in play and the stakes per encounter are a lot higher than they are in Souls games and Monster Hunter games, in terms of like what a mistake means for the remainder of the fight, keeping things as consistent as possible is pretty valuable. So they're going to keep the number of variables probably pretty close to similar. If anything, what they could do is stuff like they do with O9S Chaos. He has 2 separate patterns. If he does, the patterns are the same both times, but he can either do attack pattern A in the first half of the fight and attack pattern B in the second, or swap them. Having 2 or 3 different layouts of attacks, like let's say a boss has like a circle, like a wheel of death kind of situation, and there's 3 segments, and which segment is landed on first, second, and third is random. But once the segment's landed on, you know exactly how the segment works. That's about as close as you can really get without getting overly frustrating, especially in pickup group style content or just general group environments as a whole. Hashtag happy with Mr. Monday. Hi, Haps. Hi. Thank you for the content as always. Of course, you're welcome. I have a question for you. I sure hope so. I'm reading for a long time already, but I never got rid of one particular problem: inconsistency in doing the mechanics. Sometimes I could just space out randomly or lose focus, and I can't control this. Makes me feel bad because I blame myself if my static is progging slower, even though I'm not the only person making mistakes. Yeah, you start to think like, oh, that pull, I was the mistake. Versus you could do 20 pulls where you're not the problem, but then that one pull, somehow you become the problem, and that's it. Question, do you have any recommendations how I might be able to fix this? It's really bothering me. So I have done 2 things for this. I will say the first one is just to accept you are a human being and you will make mistakes. If you're willing to accept that other people can make mistakes and are not trying to. It just could happen. Like I spaced out. People space out. That's a normal thing. Life exists, and you might come into the game ready to play the game, but you might have also just had like a really shit week that's still kind of rotting through your mind. Like that's life, right? You just have to accept at some capacity that as a human being, we do make mistakes. And unless you live and breathe Final Fantasy XIV, which are usually where the rage clips come from people for Final Fantasy XIV, where they're like, how do you mess that up? Like they're just able to so wholly put themselves in the game, and you don't know whether that's psychologically because of them disassociating with other parts of their life, or their ability to just really focus on one thing at a time. Maybe you have ADHD and you don't know, and I don't know. Like there's so many factors. Like it's so many unknowns that. It's a matter of empathy and sympathy with people when they make mistakes, even if there is some frustrating aspect to it. But number 2 is I actually moved a lot of my hotbars closer together to the mid. That's why my screen is the way that it is, where it's like all the important information is closer to the center, because it helps me kind of like, that's where I'm looking. And if there's so many little things constantly kind of firing in my vision space, then at the very least, it's keeping my attention in the place where I need it to be. At least until I'm comfortable enough that I can kind of just wing it. I can play Final Fantasy XIV without even looking at the game sometimes and still do the mechanics correctly. It depends on the mechanic. But yeah, there's that. Or what I really like to do, if you have push to talk on, I will do my own callouts. I will say, like, even though the raid group is doing callouts, I'll do my own for myself and verbally speak my way through a fight. Great example. I was redoing top. I haven't been in top since like a few months after it came out. And so I haven't done Looper in a long time. So right as Looper is coming out, I'm going 3s, tethers, 1s, towers, 3s, tethers, 1s, towers, 4s, tethers, 2s, towers. Like I'm calling those to myself, like to get myself to force myself to pay attention to what I'm doing, what I have, what is my debuff. It puts my brain in the right space. So there are ways to do it, and those are a few ways I found to do it, but you do have to accept that no matter what you do, you're not a robot, and you will never be perfect. So don't try to set yourself to that standard. Oh, I see another lack of a hello. Hashtag Mrhappy Mondays. Hi! Is there any particular Final Fantasy IX homage you'd like to see in 7.2? I'll be very disappointed if we don't get a Soken remix of the boss music. So we've already heard the boss music in the live letter. It is exactly what you think it is. Something closer to the original and less of a Zeramis style remix, in case anyone was wondering for that. I don't hope for homages in a lot of places. I almost expect them, but not any particular one. I kind of just look at a situation after the fact and go, I wonder why they didn't use that there. Unless they did do something and did use it, then I don't think that. But I want Final Fantasy XIV to at some point be the game that other Final Fantasies pay homages to. And the more situations that it creates opportunities for that, even while it is a theme park for other Final Fantasy games, that's more exciting to me. So while obviously I expect tons of Final Fantasy IX related homages and stuff, and I'm not ever going to be surprised, and like I said, I even do quite frankly expect them, I'm not sitting here kind of hoping for them, if that makes sense. Hashtag Happy Cat Mondays. Hello, Happy. Hope you and the fluff ball are okay. Yeah, Ivy's been so full of energy, I say as I look over and she's actually sleeping for once. One short question, or more like your opinion. We know that devs have decided what to do after job level 100 now, but not what. They haven't said what they've decided. All they've said is that there's lots of options. They haven't we assume they have at this point because we're far enough along, so I assume so. But yeah, with the fandom jobs and PvP skills, you can choose for frontline starting at 7.2, as well as the streamlining of jobs. Do you think we might see a form of cross-class skills come back? No. They want very specifically to, and this was their intent with 8.0, to double down on job identity, to make sure that a job, if you pick it, it feels distinct from every other job that you could have picked. And whatever that means is entirely, we have no idea. Everyone's trying to gauge what that means. Nobody really knows what it means. But no, they will not bring back options, if that's what you seem to be implying. They want the player all players to be playing the game on equal footing and to have to master what's in front of them, not for them to have to worry about options in PvE content that is largely static in the first place. Maybe go in the direction of job having multiple skills. They're gonna stick to core identities. So here's the thing: if they go multiple different skills, that's further away from having a core identity. You're effectively divulging away from a core identity by giving them multiple. No, they're not going to do any of that. They're just going to be doubling down on what the job gauges actually do and how they interact with the job's rotation, make sure each of them are more distinct. And honestly, I'm saying that's a prediction, but that's more in line with what they've said than the idea of creating branching options, which in all honesty are not options. They're just chances to be wrong. That's the truth of the matter. When you have a ton of options, you're just creating more chances to be wrong. And that's it. And if you are wrong, everyone's going to rail you for it. So no, I don't think it's possible at all. Hashtag 24-hour maintenance with Mrhappy. Hey, hi, and good day. You too. Seeing a lot of discourse about 7.2 being so negative was discouraging. The only discourse I've seen is people don't want to wait another month or two for the remaining contents and black mages. I haven't seen any other discourse. Oh, no. And people wondering what happened to housing. The housing interior thing. Want to believe it's from frustration that will be alleviated once we have content coming. Considering on a Savage patch, we're getting lifestyle content and an exploration zone with the BA equivalent. I think another patch got this amount of major additions. The only one comes to mind is 4.3, which had Uwu, Pagos, and Heaven on High. All of A Realm Reborn is a pretty good example. I mean, 2.1 had 3 extreme trials, our first ever final boss rematch. It had a weapon system and quest line that came with the 3 different EX trials, all of which also had their own mounts as well as the Nightmare mount on top of it, beginning the trend of things that we had today. We had our first ever 24-man added on that patch. We had treasure hunting, which was added. We had duty roulettes added. I understand that. Effectively, we're talking about a game that was so not developed all the way and just needed to be released that I'm praising the idea of basic features and 7 and 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, they're all features that exist to this day that largely are still supported to this day and are taken for granted nowadays. But all of A Realm Reborn was we're going to do as many things that are foundation laying as possible and get them done. And kind of everyone did them. The big problem was the 5-month wait for the first patch from 2.0 to 2.1. 2 of those months being in which, turn 5 was practically not clearable. And there really wasn't much content, which is a problem that has been ongoing. Hence the criticism about the release cadence of expansions, especially in Dawn Trail, where people are just kind of tired after Endwalker had some kind of stinkers in the mix. If the content isn't good, then that will be that. But Ishgard Restoration was a real highlight. The first week of BA, maybe the most fun I've had in game. Feels like there's a good reason to be hopeful. Yeah, I mean, it's really just patch cadence. Dawn Trail promised some of the highest volume of content in the entire expansion, and we've even gotten more than what was promised already in terms of things that we didn't know were coming have already happened. So yeah, no, Dawn Trail by the end of it will probably be fine. I don't think anyone's really concerned about that. Everyone's just concerned about how willingly they let the start of expansions be barren when that's supposed to be the most exciting time for the game. When a new expansion comes out and everyone's hype. And that's the thing that they probably need to address. Hashtag Magnificent Magic Mondays with Mrhappy. Hey, yo, Haps. Hi. 2 quick questions. First, could the Black Mage changes be Square Enix future-proofing the job for future changes for the next 10 years? Yeah, I mentioned that earlier with my Monk comparison in 5.4. I won't say that's what it is. There's been no verbal communication of that. Maybe we'll find out in the job guide, whatever the job guide ends up saying. It's a total possibility, but it'd be arrogant of me to say, yes, that's what they're doing, because I couldn't know. And second, is someone looking to hit the gym for some hella weight loss via gaining muscle? I heard doing 4 core lifts, squat, bench press, deadlift, and overhead lift pull-up were the best to do. So my question is, would I need to separate my workouts in days, or could I just do all of those each day? So you can absolutely, so working out is not about a perfect formula. And I think a lot of people, especially with social media, have become about finding a perfect formula. Fitness, gym activity, all that at its core is about, well, for a lot of us, is trying to be healthy. You're not trying to be the next Arnold Schwarzenegger. You're not trying to be ripped and jacked. You're trying to be healthy. And so health is your heart, your circulation, your cardio, your breathing. It's your joint health, which I think a lot of people forget about. It's so many aspects. So what you've already started to worry about here is trying to figure out what is ideal for something you haven't started yet. You need to get in the gym. That is the number one thing you need to do. Squats are great. The bench press is great. The deadlift, I honestly can't recommend it. The deadlift is something that if you do not already understand how to keep your ego in check in the gym, it can be the thing that hurts you the most. So, and it's a compound lift that's mostly for your legs and only a little for your back. It is not a back workout as many people try to pretend it is. An overhead lift pull-up. Honestly, the overhead, if you're talking about an overhead press, this is something you really like. You can do it, but if you're just doing an incline bench, this and this are not that. I mean, that wasn't as far back as you should lean, but you get the idea. Aren't so drastically different that you need both. Having more side delt activation and more rear delt activation is more important than your front delts. This, see this right here, this right here. This, yeah, that is going to get plenty of action from the bench press itself. So this, entirely optional. If you like doing it, do it. But the point is, don't try to complicate getting to the gym. Workouts are fine. Find something like, find a program online that supports how long you want to be in the gym and how many days you want to be in the gym. And start there. Because what happens is you develop a baseline experience upon which you can educate yourself further. If you complicate getting into the gym and you want it to be perfect, you will doom yourself before you even begin. Because going to the gym and training at all is the first step. So do that. Don't worry about anything more than that at first. Work out within your means, within your scheduled means, and have an idea of what you're doing, and that's it. And before you ever try to push a workout, don't think you can do an amount. Start with the lowest weight. Do a warm-up set. Do just the bar. Maybe all you can do is the bar for a bench press. That's fine. Don't be like, oh, there's other people doing it. You don't care about them. You're there for you. So just go with a really basic plan. That's the number one thing. Oh, and yeah, give yourself time to rest. Don't go 7 days a week. If your schedule allows you to go 7 days, don't do that. Go at most 6, but honestly, if you've never been in the gym before and it's not something you're experienced with, 4 days is 3 or 4 days is plenty, because that'll start getting you healthy, and then maybe you start feeling like you're not tired on certain days. You can fit in one more. 5 is really like almost no casual gym goer should be going more than 5 days a week. Like once you're going 6, you're like in the category of doing a lot more joint damage over time, especially if you're not capable of taking breaks. And that tells me you're a gym head at that point. Being there 6 days a week tells me you're a gym head. And that's something that I would do because I love being in the gym 6 days a week, but I also am very measured in how much work I'm doing on every single day. And that's too advanced for someone who hasn't even gone to the gym and has not started any sort of plan or regimen or anything like that. So don't even think about that. Just start getting into the gym those 4 days. Take some days in between. If you're feeling sore, don't go, for a muscle group, whatever, change things up. But come up with a plan and just start going. That's the most important thing. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hiya, Haps. Hi. I hope you and Ivy are doing well. I'm doing great. Thank you. Longtime viewer, first time asker. Welcome. I got accepted to a hardcore static for the upcoming Savage tier, and we're going to be doing long days during week 1 to get the tier cleared fast. Do you have any tips or suggestions how to make it easier to stay better focused during long prog hours? Same advice I give everyone. Lots of sleep. Good food. Don't have I made 10 pounds of lasagna for prog. Don't do that. Find foods that are easy to consume, nutritious, delicious. Cook a tray of chicken. Maybe in the morning, throw on some rice that you can toss in. Maybe you do the chicken a few different ways, like a soy marinated chicken you can have with the rice, or maybe more like a barbecue style chicken that you can have with some greens and some potatoes, but not too many potatoes because that's a make you sleepy food. No make you sleepy foods. It's be healthy. It sounds like the not thing that a lot of people expect to hear on how to prepare for playing a video game for long hours. But you are putting your body through something the human body is technically not supposed to be through. And that is an immense amount of inactivity that has been problematic for people's health in the past. So that's the best thing you can do, because when you're healthier, you stay focused better, you stay awake, you're more coherent, you can contribute more, you can live better. And if you can live better, you can raid better. Oh, and for drink, water and coffee, don't do energy drinks. Like you can if you like. Don't chug like 5 energy drinks a day. Just don't do that. You know, none of the excess. But like coffee, tea, water, electrolytes, really good idea, especially if you're someone who cramps really easily. You know, one of those like electrolyte mixes, or I wouldn't do Gatorades, too much sugar, especially if you're sugar sensitive. You know, you don't want to do that. So yeah, like an electrolyte mix or something. You usually get like a cheap like 30 pack for like $15 of the little scoop powder, something like that. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi, hello, and well met, Mr. Happy. Hello. Hope I'm catching you on a good day. 2 days ago would have been terrible, but today is fine. With the recent Black Mage changes, which we don't know all the way yet, as well as changes made to other jobs, I was curious, do you think some aspects of mechanics within a job should be untouchable? No. I think that if a game evolves past the point of a mechanic making sense, you should consider axing it. I'll give you a great example. I love positionals, but the game has moved further and further away from them making sense. If they got rid of them and made sure to engage the job in some other way, I think that would be acceptable. Like Monk to me was the positional job, and they gradually got rid of them, and it only has 2 now, and it's not that at all. It is it's more like the weapon skill combo job. And I actually really like it under that identity, so much so I don't really care, even if I kind of do the positionals that aren't there anymore still, because they're so ingrained in me. It has successfully moved away from being the quote positional job. I think that in itself proves that a mechanic does not need to remain untouchable. Hashtag Monday with Mr. Happy. Hi. How are you? Okay, other than a little bit of sickness. My casual UCOP static is getting the Heavens Fall trio. It's a good idea to just cheese it with Tank LB3. Will we get Tank LB3 backed by Grand Octet? You will absolutely not get Tank LB3 backed by Grand Octet. Tank... Oh, sorry. My phone was ringing. I have a delivery coming soon. I got to wrap this up. What's it called? You never want to, on Heaven's Fall Trio, plan on using Tank LB3 unless your chief concern is practicing the next trio before Grand Octet. Like, if 10 Strike is the prog point you need to make sure you're getting, then yes, Tank LB3. But what I like to say is, generally speaking, most people can tell when they should almost reactively Tank LB3 Heaven's Fall versus when they should do it on. Like, let's say if somebody dies before the knockback occurs, Tank LB3 it so you can see the next trio, because that practice is going to be important. But don't just do it every time, because then no one will ever feel the pressure to learn it. And then if you want to move Tank LB3 to Grand Octet for the very end before you go into ad phase, that's going to create a problem as well. Now, keep in mind, Tank LB3 and Grand Octet has its own problem of if the tank is not doing it correctly and they accidentally get caught in their own twister, it can be really bad. So neither of them are mechanics that you should 100% commit Tank LB3s to, but they should be options. As long as you're sure that it will not cause a complete conditional failure, if you do not use it, then don't use it. But if you can, then do. So yeah, it's a pretty nuanced topic, but emergencies only. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi, hello, hi. I'm wondering, for a while, since this expansion is very Stormblood-ish, with people complaining about story and having content very similar, were content creators and players as doomer and unhappy between 4.1 and 4.2 as they are now? I don't think so, but I think we didn't have... So Heavensward was the worst expansion we've ever had content-wise. Its on-content, like, playability was so bad. It's a good thing the player base was smaller, and that's the key difference. Stormblood had a lot of upset people in a lot of different categories, but the number of players was half of what it is now. And mind you, it was half of what it is now after people have stopped playing the initial part of Dawn Trail. Like, that's how many more people play 14 nowadays. That it's like double the population of Stormblood practically during one of the most criticized content lulls of all of Final Fantasy XIV's existence. Yeah, think about that. So I think that plays a very large role. There are also far fewer creators in Stormblood. A lot more people have come onto the scene, and people who don't even like make content that much anymore have like resurfaced to like have some opinion pieces, make some social posts, etc., etc. And so, yeah, it's building over years. Makes it seem so much louder now. And I think it's more warranted now than it was in Stormblood. Because we just suffered through all of Endwalker and like some content ideas that just did not pan out. Like a lot of content ideas that didn't pan out. And it's the repercussions of that continuing into the start of Dawn Trail, along with some people not enjoying the story and other aspects of the expansion. Hashtag Monday with the Haps. Hope I did that right. That works for me. Hi, how you doing? I'm doing all right. You doing all right? I'm doing all right. I hope well. I've been living. That's what I tell every morning when I get coffee. If I go to my local coffee shop, that's what I say. I'm like, I'm doing. Question, me and a friend want to start duo tackling through deep dungeons. What are your recommendations? Not like which ones to do first. Maybe some... Warrior Red Mage, probably, right? I'm sure some other Palace of the Dead peeps. There's at least a couple of replies under this. Yeah, I mean, Warrior Red Mage is probably still like ultra omega good, I would assume, because you have Vercure. Warrior's ultimate has like tons of sustain. Both jobs can solo super easily with the damage they already have, so having them combined makes it easier. And then you have at least one res job present. You could replace the Red Mage with an outright healer, but I think Red Mage just automatically better, in my opinion. So yeah, no, Warrior Red Mage would be my go-to recommendation if I'm doing it with two people. All right, this one didn't have this one has a hashtag at the end, but I saw the hi Mrhappy at the start. Hi. Question, do you have any serious faith in Square Enix from a systems level of being able to improve the back end of the game? The game is still heavily single-threaded. The graphics overhaul is met. Best the housing as well, you know. Much more goodwill does Square Enix have before the player base comes running with pitchforks? I think you drastically overestimate how many people would even consider running forward with pitchforks. I mean, the back end of the game has been being improved for years. Like, fundamentally, the game, even as early as 2.1, like in 2.0, we had the 300. A lot of people make a very incorrect recollection of history. A lot of people say Titan Extreme suffered from a Realm Reborn's built-in latency. No, it didn't. Titan Hard Mode did, and that was rectified in 2.1. Titan Extreme was just players sucking. They didn't have any more excuses. The Titan Hard Mode people did. Although Titan Extreme does have one of the fastest AoEs in the game, Weight of the Land has been noted as one of the fastest resolving AoEs in the game. So that can get you if you're a little slow. That being said, there's not really... There is a lot, but we have made a lot of segue into things. I mean, even as something as simple as finally being able to queue up our actions for pots and food and sprints. Like, that took 10 years. But I think it's more fundamentally the way they built certain things that people want to see improve, but have already, quite frankly, adapted or adapted to over the past several years that, honestly, I don't think they care much anymore. Not that they don't care. That's the wrong way to put it. They took it into their own hands. That's what we'll put it as. Because the systems were built in such a way that it's not about improving backend. It's literally tearing down an entire system that was made to build it again. Can they? Absolutely. Will they deem it something that is worth their time to do based on their data on the back end? Questionable. And that's only something we'll ever see when it comes to a real head. But a matter of goodwill, it really depends on what you're referring to, because a lot of people don't care about a lot of the... I think a lot of people don't understand how much of Final Fantasy XIV is a social game comparatively to its content that it releases. You hear creators, you see the forum posts about, like, you know, this or that, and then we still see adoption rates of content that are in the like 15 to 25% range, which is actually pretty good, surprisingly, for end game content. Like, people think that's low. It's not the majority, but it's a lot more than one would expect it to be, given that that is not something that a lot of people want to subject themselves to, but more than this, it's bigger than it was before as well. So it's gradually grown over the years. But most people aren't even thinking about this stuff. They don't care. They just want to play their game with their pretty pixels, man. It's like people didn't care about Black Desert. They just wanted pretty pixels. But the game systems didn't keep them coming. The community didn't keep them playing. And 14's has. And it's just a matter of what's really important to players. And those of us who have complaints will continue to voice them about certain things to the point where we hope they are addressed. And the longer they aren't, the more noise we make. And if there's more things to make noise about, then that noise compounds on itself, and you end up in situations like the one we've had more recently. So, but it's not even about goodwill. It's literally just about the matter of like how attached you are to the idea. I think goodwill matters more to people who more identify their main time expenditure as 14 and don't really. They over-associate with 14. That's what I want to say. Yeah. They over-associate themselves with 14. Over-index themselves on 14. Because then you worry about goodwill. Like, I don't worry about goodwill. I just want content that I enjoy to be good and to have a good release cadence. And that's it. And I didn't get content I liked in Endwalker. I did get content I liked, but some content just didn't work for me. But the release cadence wasn't great. And Dawn Trail hasn't released most of the content that was teased, which is normal, but it just shouldn't be normal anymore because I think we're way past that point. And but everything that I've seen and everything I've played so far, the actual quality of it's been a lot higher than the previous stuff, and that is good. So it just comes down to the things that people, want to criticize more so than the things people want to enjoy. I don't know if that makes sense, but I think you might understand where I'm coming from with that. Anyway, I've got that delivery coming. I'm surprised it hasn't actually come yet. Let me see, make sure that I haven't missed it. No, okay, it says it'll be here in like 4 minutes. So good thing I'm wrapping this up now. There were some comments that I was just going to grab, but a lot of it's just stuff about last week. Just kind of adding bits and pieces. Talk about me being level-headed. I mean, yeah, but was I always that way? I don't know about that. Some people giving perspectives on some stuff like the tank comments I made last week. A lot of Black Mage comments as well. Some fellow Fizz range sufferers I can see. So yeah, like I wish unfortunately it just kind of worked out where I don't have a lot of time, but a lot of people just kind of glad that they're in a space where this is a place where, again, it's not sexy to want to have like more structured discussion, or at least less, off the deep end discussion, because a lot of people really latch on to that. Like, that's why it's popular in general. That's why it's always has been popular in media, right? It's just not who I am. Like, if you had asked me 10 years ago if I would act that way about some things, yeah, but it would probably mostly be over embellished because I know that's what people want, right? If I was like 24 still and I saw how much people were like latching on view wise to like over the top responses about like the way I feel, like I have that same passion as 10 years ago, but I'm able to put it into such a manner that other than the occasional me being funny, haha, Mr. Mad, like stuff like that, I generally am just like, I want to see something, I want to understand why it is that way, and I want to decide whether or not I agree or disagree with it, and then provide a criticism of it based on that final assessment. And I don't want it to be a shouting match more than anything else. I may vehemently disagree with people at times. Doesn't mean they shouldn't feel the way that they do, but I mean, that's just kind of life. Sometimes you feel more passionately about disagreeing and sometimes you don't. And I don't have the energy to be like Wooklamotte bad for 9 months like some people do. I can't get it. Like, it's like, I was like, yeah, that could have been written better. I thought it was okay. It could have been written better. Maybe it'll be better in the future. We'll see. And if not, then that's unfortunate. But that's like the amount of energy I have for a discussion like that. Meanwhile, you've got like 16-page dissertations about Wooklamotte and her comparing her to Emmett Selk, and I'm just like, all right, if that's what you want to do, I don't get it, but you know what? I ain't you, so it ain't my business. I'm just gonna move on. I'm gonna shift my way over. Yeah, so that's where I'm at. So that's going to be a wrap for this week's episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. Be sure to ask your questions in the comment section for next week's video. Be sure to like, favorite, and subscribe, and stay tuned for all sorts of 7.2 content over the next several months. With that, I'll see you later. I got to go get this package. Bye-bye.